I am Talisha Llewellyn. I am the Director of Operations at PostStatus. And this is Zen and the Art of Lockpicking. And I would like to thank our sponsor, StellarWP, for sponsoring this webinar. And this is Robert Rowley, and he's with PatchTech.
Hello. Hi. Thank you all for joining. Yeah, like Talisha said, I'm Robert Rowley. I'm PatchTech security advocate. And today I'm here to teach you how to pick locks. And how about how lockpicking is an art or a skill, and reflect a little bit on some life lessons while we're at it. So I teach lockpicking, if you haven't figured that out. And at least I regularly did through various hacker spaces, events, conferences, and just for fun. I've taught the basics of lockpicking to hundreds of people over the years, including my son, who you can see in this picture here. I think he was about age 4 or 5 there. And I'll be honest, you probably don't need me to teach you how to pick a lock. YouTube is fine for that. In fact, I think a lot of you might have already seen some of lockpicking lawyers' videos in the past. But I'm here to teach you more than just how to pick a single lock. I'm here to kind of show you how to build a practice, how to learn to pick any lock, and how to teach other people how to pick locks and why that's important. But this is not just for lockpicking, this is for everything. You can replace lockpicking with any skill that you want to improve. So of course, everybody wants to, everybody here probably wants to pick locks. And I have to apologize, it'll be a minute. First, we have to give a little spiel and some, forward information. But who here, I don't think I can get some feedback, but who here has already tried to pick a lock? Probably a few of you at least have tried. I sent out lock picks earlier this week or last week, and most of you have already received them, and that's okay. It's totally okay to go ahead and try to pick a lock. You probably, like I said, you probably already watched some videos on YouTube and figured out the basics. But like I said, I'm here to show you a little bit more. And for those of you who didn't, those of you who were patient enough to wait for this event, I thank you too, because patience is a very valuable skill to have, especially if you want to pick complicated locks or advance to a high degree in any skill set. So likely we're a mix of people. Some of you opened up the lockpick set and tried it out and were successful or unsuccessful. And probably some of you were not, were patient and you waited for today to join this. And that's great because we're a group of different individuals, some patient, some go-getters, some autodidactic. Some of you probably already knew how to pick a lock and are just here to join in on the fun. But so let's go ahead and get to it. And before we go in, here's a little bit more background. I'm going to give a little speech about truth and kind of the history about how I got into lockpicking and how I ended up here. So I always assumed growing up that lockpicking was forbidden knowledge, likely illegal, and I never had an opportunity to learn it. A lot of my elders, like parents and teachers, family members, people who as a child would look up to for answers and direction in life, they led me to believe that this was likely a harmful activity to learn. They meant well, but when I grew up, I obviously went through my teenage years and I began doubting what I was being told. So I sought out the answers for myself and I found out that they were wrong in most places. I learned that lockpicking was legal where I lived. So I learned how to pick locks. And in turn, I began instructing people how to pick more locks and sharing this craft, this skill with other people. Eventually though, these elders came back, but they weren't my parents, not my family. They were people I didn't know, people that saw me teaching people how to pick locks. And they approached me and they told me that they made it clear to me what their beliefs were. They still believed that it was illegal. And by made clear, I mean, they yelled at me, harassed me, belittled, insulted, etc. In short, they were mean and disrespectful, trying to tell me that lockpicking was harmful. That knowledge of lockpicking was harmful. They gave me this third degree about how the world worked in their mind, but that wasn't how the world really worked. In turn, I trust and I believe that these people genuinely were truthful in what they were saying. They believed that harm could come from the average person knowing how to do bad things with knowledge. Their stories were the sort of thing you read on the news and in headlines online. We've all read these headlines. They can be pretty disgusting. And that leads to a lot of fear. in a dangerous world, a feeling that we live in a dangerous world, a lack of control, an abundance of risk. They built their beliefs in the world they live in based on headlines that were not based in reality. So why is this fear-based belief so strong in people? It comes from spreading fearful thoughts, something humans naturally do, headlines and journalists naturally do, and because we care. We care primarily about what frightens us, what may cause us risk and harm. So if you care a lot about that, you'll share it around. And this is a common marketing and influential speaker trick. Journalists use it, politicians, dictators, grifters, and well, generally not great people use this to their advantage, to take advantage of others, to make them fearful so they do something. What's funny is that the solution to this appeal to fear-based rhetoric is to pay attention. Pay attention to your emotions. And if someone is telling you something that seems to evoke an emotion of fear in yourself, well, you might want to verify that fact before you act. It may help you avoid making a hasty decision or missing out on an opportunity to learn a skill. Looking back, these conversations with these people are really easy to spot. And they normally go like this. You're teaching people to be criminals, or you're responsible for when they rob a grandma. Basically, the things I do today will cause harm in the future. Many what-if scenarios. And simple is it simply verify. Make sure that it actually happens. If not, be aware of it as a potential, but don't act as if it's truth just based on their assumption of fear. So while many people buy into this anxiety-ridden worldview about fear-based assumptions, I seek out a different one. I seek out a worldview where the average person is trustworthy. And here we are. We're here now learning to pick locks together because I trust you all with this knowledge, and I trust you are good people. I also trust that you will remember that laws still apply. These are not get out of jail free cards. They're more like put you in jail and ask you 100 more questions why you have these on you type of cards. So check, I'm not your lawyer, but I am not giving you legal advice, but it sort of is legal advice. Check your local laws, especially if you travel or move to another state in the US or abroad to Europe. There are some places that don't take kindly to this, and these lockpicks, just simply having them in your possession may cause you an issue. But I checked most people, as long as you gave me your address that's in the state that you currently live in. I checked to make sure before I mailed you a lockpick set for those that received it, that it is legal in your local state. Of course, you should always double check yourself. You shouldn't take what I say as truth. So back to the truth, in my mind and what I've experienced in life is that majority of people are trustworthy. And this is a beautiful thing that I've seen firsthand. People's trustworthiness goes beyond culture, beyond our borders, beyond race, sports teams, gender, food preference, religious beliefs, any of that stuff that we identify ourselves with. Trust can exist beyond all of those things. And it's an important point to remember, because when humans gather and when we trust one another, we share knowledge towards a common goal. This is the foundation of our societies, communities, cultures, businesses, and so forth. Without trust, these things don't function. But with more trust, they go beyond our imagination. We can grow beyond anything we could believe. So that's why I prefer to trust all my fellow humans. And I don't go around thinking about or spreading fear or mistrust. So I'll share some stories as we go on with lockpicking. Thank you for listening to my quick little spiel. And we'll get into some definitions. Who doesn't like a pop quiz? So here I have a diagram. A and B are on the top, and it's a side cut out of a lock, and C on the bottom is, you can kind of see the cylinders turning. You can see how kind of things function. And I'll see if I can remember all these special numbers. I think number 1 there on the screen is a, I don't know if you see my mouse cursor, but number 1 there, that would be the driver pin. Number 2 is the second half of the pin, which is called the key pin. Number 3 is a spring, and those push the pins down. They hold them in the locked state when there's no key inserted. Number 4 is the cylinder, which you can see better in diagram C. And number 5, I'm not sure what that is. I don't see those ever in my life. Number 6 is the shear line. And the shear line is something that happens when all the pins are lined up, when as if the key was properly inserted, and it'll allow the cylinder to freely rotate. So let's see what number 5 was. Oh, it's a key. I've never seen one of those, because when you learn how to pick locks, you don't need a key. And that's a terrible joke. So I'll move on, but I got them right. The driver pins and the springs push everything down. The lock rotates when the shear line is reached, when those two pins line up just right. A couple more definitions. You're going to need to know what a wrench and a pick is. So there's a wrench. I have one in my hand here, which is a tool with a 90-degree angle in it. It's a strong, sturdy piece of metal. This has a 90-degree angle. It's used, it kind of looks like an L. I'll get into how it's used in a second. And then the picks are used to actuate those pins that we saw in the previous diagram. So the pins are, you insert the wrench into the base of the key, base of the lock at the bottom of the keyhole, at the bottom where the pins are, where the pins are not. And then you put in the pick to the top so the pick can manipulate the pins or actuate them. So both the driver and the key pins, when they're pushed up at the right amount, right, it'll create that shear line, and it's pushing against the springiness of that spring that's located at the top. So when they all line up, you'll be able to rotate it, and you actually use the wrench to rotate the cylinder. Don't worry, we'll go into explanations again. So the key is when you insert the wrench, you apply gentle tension. The wrench is used kind of like how the key rotates. Then you insert the pick at the top and you push the pins up until the driver pins and the key pins are located at the shear line, number 6, and then allows the cylinder to freely rotate. So even shorter, gently apply pressure or tension with the wrench in the base of the key and use the pick to spring the pins until they're in the right location so that the lock will freely rotate, or the cylinder will freely rotate. I'm going to have to, of course, give a demo. So everybody can get their picks out now. If you've kind of understood what I was saying, don't worry. If you didn't understand it, don't worry. When you actually apply the knowledge, it's way easier to understand. I need to find out how to change my camera. There it is. No, stop my video. Pause my share. Oh no, I can't control my camera. Well, I can't change my camera, so I'm going to try to use this camera. Not what I wanted, but I will use this camera here in front, and I will show you the demo. So what happens is you put the wrench in the base of the cylinder. And this is not wanting to focus right. And you apply gentle tension. I'm holding the lock with two fingers, and I'm actually applying tension with my ring finger. You can do this however it feels comfortable to you. You can also do like this, but basically hold the lock with 2 fingers, insert the wrench into the base of the lock or base of the cylinder, and then apply tension. Then you insert the pick into the front or all the way inside. You put the pick all the way until it hits the wall. And then you just kind of pull it out while you spring on those pins. It's pretty much it. You kind of repeat this. When you come all the way out, you don't have to take the pick all the way out. You just push it right back to the end wall and slowly bring it out while you're actuating the pins. So the simple steps are repeat is pretty much what it is. And I'm going to give you some tips as we go along the way. Also remember, for everybody, this is not a race. It's just a practice. Let me see if I can change. Nope. All right. Am I back on the screen sharing? Somebody? I'm assuming it's good.
Yes, you're back on the screen.
All right. Let me get that presenter view going again. All right. So it's not a race, it's a practice. I'll keep giving some talking advice and some tips as we go along. But does anybody have any questions for the basics, like insert your wrench into the base of the cylinder, apply gentle pressure, that's key, gentle pressure for the rotation. And then you kind of pull it out, put the pick in and pull it out and just kind of rake. This is the raking method, if anybody's specific, not Reiki, raking. And it's just push the pins up and back, and you just repeat this process, applying gentle pressure. And also apply constant, similar pressure. Sorry, I shouldn't say pressure, I should say tension. It's because this is the first and this is the most important lesson with probably both life but definitely for lockpicking. The tension that you apply to rotate the cylinder using the wrench must be gentle but firm. If you give it too much tension, much like in life, you're going to break the tool. If you give yourself too much tension at work or at anything you do and you just try to force it in, it's going to break the tool most of the time. I'm a guy. I've broken a lot of tools in my life. So I know this is as a lived experience. So don't try too hard, apply gentle pressure or gentle tension, and you'll be amazed about how successful this is. And just keep actuating the pins. And of course, too little tension and you won't go anywhere. You're not doing the right amount. The key is finding just the right amount of tension to get progress going and working. And I'm going to keep trying to pick locks here visually for y'all. And hopefully I can pick this one eventually while I'm giving the talks. But are there any questions? I can't see the chat. So are there any questions out there?
Carrie asked which pick is appropriate.
The pick type, you're going to have a whole bunch of types in your pick set. And I tend to stick with these two, which you're not going to be able to see very well. One is shaped like a J. The other one is shaped like a little snake, like a squiggly line. I avoid any pick that has a sharp angle in it. There's some that are shaped like triangles. I don't use those ones for picking locks. You can. These two, the J is very nice at actuating just single pins at a time. The snake is really useful for the raking method that I just showed you, where you'll just be able to actuate various pins at various ways. And the convenience of this one is if it's not quite working and you feel like you're not getting anywhere, you can just rotate it upside down and it kind of changes the shape of the S or the squiggly in it. And these are so any pick that's kind of roundish. You may also have one that I like to call the, what is it, snowman? It'll be two round circles. I don't use that one for anything. Pick sets tend to come with 10 to 30 picks. I find I only need these two. And these ones are great for beginners. But I wouldn't worry about it too much. Feel free to give it a few minutes, and it's all about that tension and getting the right pins. Those of you who have a clear lock, like this one, you'll actually be able to see that shear line as you're picking the lock. And so it's really convenient. You can kind of cheat at first, but you should eventually move up to the red lock that I sent to you in your kit, which is it's not an expensive lock, but it is an annoying lock to pick. So I wanted to share a little bit more about lock picking and what it is. Lock picking is a craft, a skill, a trade, legal in most places. Again, double check your local laws, especially if you move. But I find that it's a lot of fun to learn. It's kind of a cool and useful skill to have. So if a friend ever locks themselves out of their house, it's kind of convenient to be able to show up with a pair of lock picks and help them get into a door. So they don't, that may be to the dismay of a local locksmith who may charge $80 or some price to come down and pick a lock for you. But they also offer a lot more services. Locksmiths should be able to be doing more complicated things like replacing cylinders and giving people high security locks instead of just the stuff we find in the stores. So it can be a career, but it can also be some sort of competition. This is a picture from an event called Lock Sport, where people are basically picking locks based on time. And the person who picks the most locks, they go through ranking tables, they do a whole competition. The people who do it the fastest and beat everybody else win, prizes or accolades or at least acknowledgement that they're quite good at picking locks. And this is kind of good, a little friendly competition when you're trying to improve things. It gives us goals to strive for, gives us reasons to improve. And it's very valuable. Competition is very valuable in society as well. But let's keep the mudslinging out of it, right? That's another fallacy ad hominem, but that's another topic for another time. The mudslinging competition is never useful. If you're just sitting there, here to pick locks, seeing who has the fastest pick, it's great to do a competition if you need that in your life, especially. But for those of us who don't care about the competitive aspect, like myself, or being put on the spot like myself, who cannot pick this lock right now, and I'm beginning to feel that anxiety of I'm supposed to be the guy who knows how to do this, so I'm going to keep on picking this lock while I talk. But,
Robert, we have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
It is from Jeremy. Why are there so many available if you're able to reduce it down to these two?
I don't sell lock picks. They just the sets come with various purposes. That's somebody pick one, but yeah, the sets come with various purposes. Like I said, I've minimized my usage of lock picking down to these two because these are the ones I practice on all the time. They're the minimal viable is what I mean. They have other ones. They have other purposes. I've heard that I think like the triangle one is called a key extractor, but I've never used it for extracting keys. So a locksmith who does those things might be able to help out and clarify, like if they have very explicit purposes. But I find, like I said, just for picking purposes, these are the best ones that work for me. And I've picked with the weird triangle ones, and I've picked with the weird circle round ones, but they're not the ideal pick for that solution. Where was that? Any other questions?
How far insert the wrench?
All right, the wrench, that's the L-shaped one. Your wrench probably looks different than mine, but I insert it pretty much all the way, but it has to be at the base. It has to be at the very base, the bottom of that cylinder. Notice that what I mean by the bottom, it's the part where the keyhole that you can see sort of is actually touching the base of the cylinder. The part where the keyhole doesn't touch the top, that's where the pins are located. So you want to insert the wrench in the base all the way. The short end goes in. There we go. Short end goes in, and then again, gentle pressure. Sometimes the wrench will shift around. You want it to find its natural like catch point so that you can apply that gentle pressure. Sometimes too, there are locks like this little red one that have little tiny, you can see them like feet, and that's really inconvenient. So for those ones, you'll have to actually insert the wrench a little bit farther out to clear those little tiny, I don't know, those pins, those like little feet on the bottom of the lock. They will impede the motion of your wrench. But I'll finish this slide and then ask for questions at the end of every slide. Try to remember that. So what makes lockpicking this great craft or hobby, something that I like about it, is it's a low barrier to entry. Pretty much most anybody with hands can learn how to pick. If you know how to knit, you can learn how to pick, right? You can even build your own set of tools. You don't have to purchase these tools, but the tools generally cost less than $50. There's a progressive difficulty. You can start with these clear locks, which are easier, move up to this kind of annoying cheapo lock, which is kind of annoying, but you can't see it. You can move up to A-bus locks, which have security pins in them and are giving me a pain to pick today. Or you can just move up to whatever locks you find. I love going to swap meets and I love bartering. And it is great to barter with somebody for the price of a lock, especially when that lock doesn't have a key. It's a great conversation to have. How much is a lock worth when there's no key? Pretty much nothing. So you can find locks in random places and just see if you can pick them, right? And there's progressive difficulties. Like I said, most locks you buy from the store are going to be pretty basic to pick, and some are going to be pretty hard. You can also use that difficulty level to track your improvement, right? If you're able to move away from the clear lock and pick this little red lock I sent, and then pick more and more difficult locks that you, and I should say, the locks you own, there's my little warning now, don't go picking the lock at the bank's front door. There's nobody wants to be, you should be picking locks you own and you have permission to pick. But it's very nice. You can get more and more complicated, more and more difficult, and you track that, oh, you're pretty good at picking locks. And of course, the skill goes away if you don't pick for a while, then you come back. Like I said, if skill goes away if you don't pick for a while, and I really got to be working on this. And you can come back and just pick up from the start and just progress yourself. It also gives a great amount of mind-body connection. You get a lot of feeling of dexterity. You can feel the springs. You should be able to feel the springs with your pick. You should be able to feel the wrench. And this gives us really satisfying click when you actually pick the lock. So, and it requires commitment to improve. You can't just own the lockpick sets. You have to actually pick the locks to improve at lockpicking. There's also, I'll get into it in a minute, the social and community aspects of lockpicking. And the competitive aspect I already mentioned. It could also become a career, as I mentioned before, but most of us are in a different space. And it's also very obvious when it's a win-lose scenario. If you're picking and you haven't picked it yet, you haven't won yet. When you pick it, you open the lock, it's very clear that you've succeeded. And so, like I said, lockpicking actually has a healthy competitive community behind it. They have shared goals to demonstrate the variety and value behind different locks and different picking styles and the effort that goes into picking different types of locks. I mentioned before, Lockpicking Lawyer, I'll mention him again at the end. He's a great reference if you just want to watch somebody picking, and he explains how simple things are, and he's really proficient at picking. But a lot of that is he put in the work, he put in the practice, and anybody can really learn this. And there are also multiple forums and communities online for hobbyist lock pickers, including one on Reddit. A lot of Reddit's kind of messed up, but this one part, the R lock picking, is actually kind of nice. They have a chart. They have a a competitive aspect where you can earn rankings based on the types of locks that you can pick. So as more advanced you get, the more better ranking you have. So I'll open for questions.
How many pins are in the red lock?
Oh, I don't know, 4 or 5. Let me feel. Actually, I can look in the key. There appears to be 4. I can base that on the key. I'm cheating. I can count 4 little divots. But I will now attempt to pick this annoying little red lock. The lion lock, which, by the way, the advertisement for this lock, when I purchased it for everybody who got a care package, it says it's pick proof. So let's find out. This is one of those things where you want to, oh my goodness, it's almost picked, but I need a different wrench. It says they're pick proof. Let me start over again. There you go. So I'll continue while I pick this pick proof lock, which is again something somebody told me, but not a lived experience, something I'm actually doing. But lock picking has this community behind it. I mentioned it a few times. This is a skill that was shared between people, both in the dark and dark corners of the internet and academic spaces like MIT, who had released a great guide to lock picking. It's one that I learned from, as well as at in-person events, at open source conferences, information security hacker conferences. I've even seen lockpick sets at WordCamps. It was one of these conferences, specifically DEF CON, is where I learned to first pick locks. And at many other conferences afterwards, many small local gatherings, hacker spaces, etc., I taught lockpicking to hundreds of more people. And they went on to share their knowledge with hundreds of more now. There goes that for that's an advertisement for PickProof. So socializing is, I think, is what that was called. That viral effect that we have when humans interact with each other, share knowledge openly and honestly and trust each other. We socialize and we spread skills and knowledge to hundreds, if not thousands or tens of thousands of people. And it's something we're doing, oddly enough, right now. And remember how I mentioned that trust at the start? Trust is a big part of how this works. The fact that at these information security conferences, we trusted one another with knowledge. Knowledge sharing goes beyond picking locks. All aspects of humanity and really information security were discussed, shared, debated, and improved upon by individuals who built networks of trust. And this is not a new concept. I believe that this is something humans do and they have done for generations. And will continue to do this for generations to come. In a way, sharing information, passing down knowledge, building networks of trust is some amount of the essence of humanity. Any questions coming up? No? Good.
Oh, here's one.
Oh.
John Richards said, sometimes there's a perception that open source apps like WordPress are less secure because we publicly share our vulnerabilities versus closed source where it's kept private. What are your thoughts?
This lock that I purchased says that it's lockpick proof. Were they telling the truth? Or do you trust me that I just opened this with a lockpick set? Showing your work, open source community and transparency in source is so important to showing the work. You can prove it definitively that the source code is secure or not. And PatchTech, coincidentally, which does manage a database or knowledge of vulnerabilities in these components, shows when they are and are not secure. We handle vulnerability reports for developers. We interact with developers of plugins, components, and they patch most of the time. It's something that we've learned how to do, and not just me at PatchTech, but the whole team, the people behind the PatchTech Alliance, Vlad and Darius, Oliver, who started the group and brought together everybody. We're all committed towards improving the security, oddly enough, by exposing whenever somebody kind of incorrectly states that maybe their code is hack proof. But for those people, most of the time, like I said, most people don't say they're hack proof, they just understand the limitations. And by understanding the limitations and working with people who report security bugs, their code is more secure because they're getting constant security audits, right? Somebody is looking at their code. And for those plugin owners and authors that participate in the PatchTech Alliance, or kind of a bug bounty program, they are able to get constant people look, they know for sure somebody is looking at their code base because somebody's trying to get a bounty, trying to find vulnerabilities in their source code. And this is a good thing. It means that more security bugs are getting found and patched by the developers. There's a gap in knowledge, this hidden, forbidden knowledge of what a vulnerability is, and PatchTech Alliance fills that gap. But any other questions about community?
John said mic drop response there. And then we have a question about the wrench.
About the wrench?
Yes. Can you show, hold on 2 seconds. Here. Can you show the wrench in the base again? Should it be angled or straight in?
It should be wherever it settles comfortably. If you begin applying gentle tension and it rotates, that's okay. It can be at any degree, 90 degrees, 45 degrees, whatever it settles in, so you can actually start the motion of rotating the cylinder. So I wouldn't worry about it. And especially, of course, I have a lock and I've got a slightly different pick or a slightly different wrench. And I put it in here and it kind of offsets, right? This one's all the way at almost, what is it? I don't know the degrees. So it's almost 45 degrees, a little off from 45, right? If it's settled at 90, that's fine too. And every wrench and lock will kind of fit in their own thing. The only thing you can do wrong is try not to use a wrench that obscures the keyhole enough that you cannot put the pick in. If you can't put the pick in, or you can't settle the wrench at a certain point, then yeah, you need to probably change the tools, choose a different wrench, choose a different pick. All right, where was I? I had another mic drop moment here, right? I'm supposed to be talking about that humanity grows by sharing knowledge and combining ourselves in communities of trust. And that is where I'm supposed to drop that post status is one of those communities, right? We're here in a community sharing knowledge like lockpicking and hacking activities and things like that. But I've been a part of these communities a long time in my life. And that's when I've grown the most is when people willingly look to share knowledge with one another. They grow as individuals and they grow as a community. They contribute back. And I think there's a handful of talks coming up in the next few weeks, or all different topics. Coaching, Talisha might even know more of them off the top of her head, but I know there's a coaching one. There's another development one, like personal development one. There's a ton of stuff going on in post status, and I think this is awesome. Growing and giving back and being better for each other and sharing our knowledge is valuable. So I find that post status is just a breath of fresh air, especially after I read a social media news feed for too long. Headline after headline of negative things. I come to post status to just kind of like, I can breathe. People here are actually looking to help one another out. Competitors can be side by side, and ideally they can find a shared goal. So I jumped, that's why one of the reasons why I jumped at the chance to share the knowledge here today. And because post status is a group of people who are mostly free of this fear mongering rhetoric. So, and I'm looking forward to those future talks as well. I'm going to insert a little PatchTech sales slide. I already mentioned it earlier, but you may think that PatchTech is a security plugin, but I wanted to share that we're a lot more than that. We're brokers of knowledge. We manage comprehensive database of knowledge about vulnerabilities in WordPress and components, and as well as we're going to expand to more open source projects in the future. We assist security researchers and developers through the PatchTech Alliance. We help the researchers that can be a little bit crass at times and act as a mediator between them and the developers. I've done this on my own time, and I enjoy doing it if PatchTech Alliance needs it. But we also engage with the developers, giving them hints and tips so they can patch the security bugs. I write a weekly column and a podcast called the PatchTech Weekly, where I'm just going to be talking about vulnerabilities and this knowledge about vulnerabilities, how they work, and how to defensively code against them. And that's just free for everybody. And of course, we share this knowledge. It's part of our being a broker of knowledge. We have to share it with the general public. And we do that through our plugin, right? If you install the plugin on your website, you get notifications when there's vulnerable components, as well as through our intelligence feed for hosting providers, as well as through the PatchTech Alliance for everybody else. So there's a lot of similarities, but I won't dwell too much on that during this slide. Any questions yet?
Not yet.
I'll even add then, because to give instead of a question, by supporting PatchTech, you support the people who are trying to support the community and improving security in the community. We're really heavy on the community aspect. Developers we interact with, security researchers we interact with, hosting providers, everybody who's a customer gets to engage with us as if basically we're friends, we're community, we're trying to gain and benefit one another. PatchTech even goes as far as being accepting of the idea of sharing our knowledge, our vulnerability knowledge with somebody who you might think is our competitor. Some other security plugins out there use our knowledge and integrate it into their services. Agencies we find have great success with using our knowledge and integrating that with their services to upsell even more care package, basically security care packages to their customer, so that they can do, they use it to notify their customer of, hey, here's a bit of knowledge I have. You're running an insecure component. We need to take some action today. And that's much better than assuming that somebody is securing things. But I found in my career, working information security, communication is key. So let's talk about difficulty, right? With picking locks, there's a range of difficulty depending on the difficulty level of the lock. And if you're starting to feel bored, right, it probably means you're on too simple of a lock. Try a more difficult one. If you're starting to feel burned out, frustrated, like you just can't deal with it, and then you're probably on too difficult of a lock. Difficulty is much like tension. The thing we mentioned, you do with a wrench. Just enough tension is what you want. Just enough difficulty is what you want. Finding that middle ground, but still the middle ground where you're still able to be persistent. I'll talk a little bit more about frustration, but how does anybody have any questions yet on the picking locks? Has anybody been unsuccessful or unsuccessful? No.
I've not been able to get the last pin to move.
Oh, okay. So a pin binding and being unable to move likely means you're applying too much tension on the wrench. If you have difficulty moving a pin, it means too much tension is being applied with the wrench and the cylinder is locking it in place. So gently enough, back off a little bit on that tension. I think I said this in the beginning, tension is key. Tension is really the trick. You would think it's getting the pins in the right place, but that's an afterthought. It's easy to jiggle pins, getting the perfect tension, just enough touch. You would want to think this is like, it's less tension than petting a cat. You know, you wouldn't want to like really roughly pet a cat. Like you want just a gentle thing, like you're trying to pick up, I don't have a good analogy for that, but so you would be surprised about how little tension you need to get things going. So difficulty is something you might not encounter today, and I hope not, because you may be in this mode called a student's mind, is what I've heard it referenced as before. It's a great thing that avoids frustration, and it's a technique as well. And if it's your first time doing something, if it's your first time picking locks today, you're probably experiencing this beginner or student's mind, which is great. You're accepting of failure, right? Because you've never picked locks before. So if you don't pick a lock today, nothing has changed, right? You might have spent an hour listening to me and you'd be that's the least of it. And the great part is you can really celebrate your wins because you've done a new experience, right? You've opened a new lock, you've opened up a new experience. And paying attention to those feelings when you win or when you lose is kind of where I'm going to get into next. Because paying attention to emotions, I mentioned earlier, is an important thing, and it's a helpful thing to do in life. So student mind will come to an end, right? You eventually will have felt that you know how to pick a lock and you should be able to pick it. So you're going to start feeling something else instead when you can't pick a lock, and that's called frustration. So let's talk about frustration. Once you picked a few locks, you'll be confident in your ability. You'll have a feeling you know how to pick locks. And you should be able to pick locks. And you will find more locks and more difficult locks to pick to continue your progression. Of course, inevitably, you'll feel frustration when you can't get success at picking some of these more difficult locks, or perhaps it's your first lock, but I'll help you out. We likely feel this in other parts of our life as well, but lockpicking this is something we can do to actually trigger it intentionally. It seems strange to trigger frustration intentionally, but if you're dealing with frustration, you find that you get frustrated at the wrong times in life, you should probably practice intentionally getting frustrated in a controlled environment, like just you picking a lock. So when you can identify the emotion, you can use it to your benefit. You can, when you know it's there, you can let it not guide your actions. right? Frustration and young men typically results in locks being thrown across the room, or keyboards if you're working at your desk. This is not a good thing. It's not a helpful thing. It's an inappropriate behavior. And you can instead, if you identify frustration and you know how to work through it, you can get a better skill. So you can learn, maybe you need to change up what you're doing, do something different, use your thinker, not your emotions, to control what you do. You could try a different lock, an easier to pick lock. You could try a different approach. Like I just mentioned, maybe a little less tension, maybe a little more, but probably not more, probably a little less tension. Probably different, maybe a different pick is what you need, right? Maybe you're just using a pick that can't reach that last pin to actuate it. And maybe you just kind of need to take a short break, like your hands are hurting, you know, your brain's fried, or you're just kind of exhausted, and it's okay to take a little break, 15-minute break, and let the frustration pass. You can also just continue with the frustration. Let it exist. Let the emotion exist inside of you, but don't let it control you, and be in control of the frustration. I'll get into how that could be beneficial in a second. Continuing with the frustration is a meditative practice. So you're now no longer picking a lock, you're kind of hacking your brain and your behavior. You're sitting with frustration. You can choose the outcome that you would like whenever you feel frustration or any emotion that you dislike. Frustration is an emotion that works like all other emotions. Like I mentioned before, it's great to practice it, because I guarantee we all feel emotion, we all feel frustration at some point in time in our life. And we also all feel frustration if you cannot pick a lock. And if you don't feel frustration, like I said, just go get a harder lock. Eventually you'll find one you can't easily pick. Your methods, your tactics aren't working. You've got to reevaluate things, try different tension, try different tools, try different picking, raking methods. Maybe start over, right? Just a good, easy way to start over. I didn't share this. If I can find my wrench, is you insert the wrench and you've been picking for a while and the lock's just not going. What you might have had happen is the key pin is too high past the shear line and binding the whole thing. So you need to allow that key pin to drop. Well, you can't choose which key pin to drop. You got to start over. So you let go of the wrench and you kind of twist it back the opposite direction. Rotating it clockwise would be opening. So rotating counterclockwise would be resetting all the pins, and you actually hear them all click right back into place. And you just start over. And that's normal, that's fine, right? Especially with picking locks, sometimes you got to start over and just start fresh. Maybe start trying to pick the last pins first instead of the front pins. So this ability to identify frustration and continue even when you're feeling frustration is something we actually call grit, G-R-I-T, or stick with itness. Of course, not everybody has a different amount of grit, we can say, but this is a way to kind of cultivate it. Of course, there's some dangers with frustration, as I mentioned before. Sometimes people, especially young men, like to throw things if they get frustrated, and that's another response to frustration. It's called aggression. You're trying to let things out. And I recommend that if you find yourself feeling like that you want to throw something, hopefully nobody's actually thrown the locks yet today, but if you feel that, you've got to take a break, let that feeling pass and be able to be in control of yourself, and then think of it instead as grit. Like you're just going to keep working with it. Put a time box on it. Say 10 more minutes, and that's it. Cut it off. And that's basically how you should go about dealing with these things. Yeah, here's a slide I had. It was meant to show the grit. But yeah, and like I said, there's it's either grit, but it's not always grit. Sometimes it's aggression, and you need to be mindful that frustration can lead to both. But frustration also leads to this great thing called joy. And it's really cool. If you're frustrated with a problem and you've worked at it long enough and you put in a lot of effort into trying to solve it, and you continue to push towards a goal, and you eventually hit that goal, then you get the feeling of the joy of accomplishment. And just like with frustration, I said earlier, hey, pay attention to your frustration. Also pay attention to your joy of accomplishment. Spend some time with it. Spend a minute with it. The talk, the Zen aspect of this talk actually came from a conference I did, and it was originally all focused on this joy that you get from succeeding in picking locks and kind of identifying your emotions during it. And I had a friend of mine who, one friend picked a lock in the circle, and then the other friend came over and, he picked the lock and he was successful, and he raised his hand. He's like, I'm so happy I picked the lock, yay. My other friend came running over. And he basically said, stick with it. Feel the emotion that you're having right now at that exact moment, and just remember it. And that is a key thing, because if you can remember your feeling of joy, you remember your feelings of accomplishment, you can kind of come back and replay them in your mind later and be like, oh yeah, like I'm doing good, right? I'm getting things done. I'm going on, I'm moving forward, right? And applying a little tension in life, and this goes beyond lockpicking, I'm applying a little tension in life, I'm getting progress done. And you will eventually find that you hit bigger goals and you feel bigger senses of accomplishment. And even more, while writing this talk, I've been keeping a lockpick set next to my desk. And I found it very fun that when I was getting kind of frustrated at work or difficult, like getting too many tasks needing to be getting done, or if I'm just feeling off and I got 15, 20 minutes, well, I just picked up a lockpick set, picked up a lock, and I just went to pick it, you know? And I found that if I knew basically within 10, 15 minutes, I will get a sense of joy, a sense of accomplishment, because I know I can pick that lock. And I would try more difficult locks to get more sense of joy and accomplishment. And I would just continue doing that. And it was a great little break sometimes if I felt that like writing these slides, trying to stay on task and trying to work for them is quite helpful. So I'm going to take a second for questions. I'm going to go back to my A-bus, more difficult lock. Any questions out there? Can I see this more? Oh, good, I can see chat now. Need another set of hands. All right. The red one is difficult. I saw that and I agree. The red one was pretty surprisingly annoying. Let me try to pick that. Oh, I already picked it. So, but I'll try it again. I found it quite funny that this is the cheapest lock that I could find on Amazon. Even more funny, the fact that they said they were pick proof, which is one of those things, again, marketing people telling me how the truth, which is not the real truth, they're just telling me what they want to say to sell me sell me a lock. Of course they're gonna say it's pick proof. Same is true with software. Anybody who says their software is secure, 100% secure, you just got to give them kind of a groan and be like, well, you know, you've got to show your work, which is why I like, again, going back to that open source thing, I prefer you show me your work. You will find out that none of these locks, the standard American lock is nothing like, they're generally not pick proof. None of them are. They have technology, like this one here has a security pin. These are pins that are designed to interact with the pick and basically bind at the wrong locations. They're kind of shaped funny, like either like instead of being a straight cylinder, like they come in like this, or maybe they're shaped like a mushroom with like a little round tip at the end. What will happen is this causes difficulty in binding. It binds at the wrong point, preventing a shear line to be present unless the proper key is inserted. I even found a lock for a while, I think sold by Kwikset, which was a lock that could be quickly rekeyed without using tools, without removing the cylinder. And I found that these ones were really cool because they had multiple pins. The pins, there were like 3 or 4 pins in every stack. So they're really difficult to pick because like the shear lines were all over the place for the acceptable ones. But I found out that later that it turns out you can just do a brute force entry on them. So it was just basically a screwdriver and a rotation. And it was a technique to break into these locks every time. It destroys the lock, but the lock basically provided no security. And so I'll talk a little bit about what I call the hobbyist's curse. So this is a story of frustration and how I can always get frustrated picking locks. So I have a hard time picking locks when they're needed to be picked, like if I'm on the spot, like literally right now. But one time though, I was at an event, I think it was called a bar camp. These are very old school events. And with limited permission, okay, no permission at night because we were drinking, I found a room that was locked and I said, I'm gonna pick that lock. And of course I picked the lock. It was pretty easy to do. And it was late at night and we opened up the door and there was just this room full of computers. This is at like a training center, a room like a school type place. And it was kind of neat. But of course I'm not a bad guy. So I didn't do anything in that room. I just closed it up, locked it behind because it was locked when I found it. And I went on with the night and went to sleep, woke up the next morning with a hangover. And the event organizer actually came over to me in the morning and he said, hey, I heard you picked those locks last night. We need to talk. And I felt like, oh boy, I'm in trouble. You know, something happened. Somebody else went in. Maybe I didn't lock and all those computers were stolen. I felt Like in my hangover mind, it was the worst. But there was no trouble. It turns out the organizer pulled me aside and was asking if I could pick the lock to the storage room again. What had happened was they didn't have the keys that they were given by the venue. They lost the keys, and they had promised the venue they would take all those computers and put them back where they found them originally. The event we were doing was in a computer class. There were computers in there, but they took them out and put them in the storage room. So I had opened the door to the storage room, saw the computers that were supposed to be back out into the classroom, and I locked it behind me. And then the next day they said, okay, can you pick it again and let us in? And sure enough, I spent 20 minutes, 30 minutes trying to pick that lock. And I was not able to pick it. Eventually they called somebody at the school, at the venue, and who had the keys, and they drove in, and I was trying to pick it frantically. Even now that there's a time limit on it, right? I'm trying to prove to myself and everybody else that I could open it up so easily. And in the end, no, I can only pick locks when there's no anxiety, no, like at that point in time, I could pick it when there's no requirement, like there's no need for it. It's just for fun. But if there's a need for it, I fall into this horrible thing where I just can't get the pick done. Another time, I picked locks all over around my house. So I purchased a new house, and they had locks all over the gates outside. All the locks were keyed the same, but they didn't give me a key. So that was kind of annoying. All these gates are locked in my house, and they don't have a key, and they're all keyed the same. So I went around and I picked one, and I was like, oh, that's easy, right? So I'm able to remove locks padlocks specifically, that I don't want present at my house. So I picked one, no problem. Second one gave me little problems. Third one, I really just can't get to it. Don't know what's wrong. And so I just leave it be. And the next day I come back, try to pick it again, give it a full 15, 20 minutes. Can't pick it. So basically it had been outside for so long, it was just messed up and dirty. So I planned the next day to come back, and the next day I brought water, a chair, a hat. I was ready to get comfortable. And I sat down in front of the lock, and I spent probably 30 seconds, and it immediately picked. And I think, and right here, this is that lock. So I've kept that lock without the key. And this is the annoying one that was sitting on a fence that I couldn't pick. And occasionally I come back to it and I just pick it because, again, I just want to prove to myself I can, and I get the joy of accomplishment. And I remember that little time that lock was such a pain to me. And also this hobbyist curse is probably why I teach others how to pick locks, and I'm not a professional locksmith, and I'm not a competitor. I'm just a hobbyist having my fun. All right. Any other questions before I get into the last few slides here? Feel free. Oh, there we go. Got this one again. Let me get that satisfying click. All right, no other things. So anybody having, Talisha, are you successful yet?
I'm still
not successful. All right, let me see how you're holding it. I'm going to try to give you direct.
Well, so I said the red one because the clear one was making me upset.
It's fine.
So let's go harder. Let's do that. This very last one, it's like I can't, the one next to, or the one up from it, I can get that. Oh, but hey, Ned's in the same bus as me. We're on the struggle bus over here.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you said I'm going to use one of these clear ones. Oh yeah, this is I got my wrench raked all the way over there. I'm going to get my pick, and I'm going to use the J for this one. And I'm going to, oh, I can't get my pick in. Oh, that means I need another wrench. All right, I got another wrench. Couldn't get my pick in there. So I'm going to use similar wrench to what you guys probably have in the Southward kits. Putting in the bottom. Okay, that comes out completely different, right? This is where I'm going to put it here. And again, also another cool thing with tension, if you push I always push in the end because leverage. You always get the best control of your leverage by putting your finger at the end and leveraging from the farthest point of the wrench, if you feel it. If you don't, and you're not comfortable with it, sure, go ahead and go here. But the farther out, better tension you'll get. Oh, last spring section of mine isn't actually a pin slot, and it does not need to be picked. Ah, that might be a thing.
Because there's a little thing in it.
It might be a security pin there. Let's see. Yeah. So can you see, when you look at your clear one, can you see the shear line above the cylinder? If you can see any 2 points of the pin, basically 2 pins, the line in between them, if any of those are raised above the cylinder, then you know you've pushed that pin too high and it's kind of bound in the wrong spot. The last one on mine looked like that. On the very last one, oh yeah, I can actually reach the shackle on this one. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but you don't want to pick on the shackle. There you go. That giant one at the end, these are the pins. Oh, that's actually upside down. These are the pins with the springs. This thing at the end, which I can reach with my pick, like I can reach all the way over here. And that's the shackle. Don't pick the shackle. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pins in the clear lock. If you have the same set that I have here.
Okay, so it's the 7th one that I can't get to move.
Mm-hmm. And is it just the pin, the pick is unable to actuate it?
I don't know. I can't do it either.
Nev can't do it either. All right.
I can get all the other ones to move, but that one, it's like, I've tried several different.
Can you get it to move with no tension at all? Should be without the wrench, just go through. Oh yeah, that one doesn't really want to move on mine either. I don't think I would worry about that one. I wouldn't worry about that one. Seems to fall into the shear line already. And it may be a security pin or something, but let me find my wrench that I've lost. There it is. So this goes in here. And yeah, having a difficulty. I can't get my pick in all the way. Definitely bound up on something. There we go. It's actually, yeah. I see you're doing something. Try to avoid rotating your pick hand. There's no value in rotating the pick hand. It's a distraction. Oh. But it's natural because that's how you're probably using your right hand or the hand you would insert a key with and want to rotate.
Yeah.
You got to kind of disconnect that in your brain, and just the rotation comes from the tension on the wrench, and the pick goes in, and then just actuate that last pin if you can, or skip it if it seems like it's already bound in the right place. And this pick doesn't want to go in for me, so I'm going to switch it to the wavy one. I'm going to try the wavy one because it tends to not get obstructed very easily. And I can see I'm too high on one of the pins going through. But all right, I'll get back to the couple last slides, and then I'll try to switch my camera so we can do a physical hands-on one. So I'm going to talk again about trust, right? And I'm going to talk about an important aspect of how to build trust in people who do not trust you, or people who are spreading fear, because I've done this as well. I've interacted with a lot. A lot of people like to give the advice of ignore the haters, and this is okay advice when it comes to an extreme. But it's not a constructive point. It's not a constructive advice, especially when a hater sometimes something that we've all accidentally been, we all make mistakes. And I recommend something else instead. Look for a common ground, a shared goal. If somebody is spreading negativity, even if somebody's spreading negativity and fear, being a hater or fear monger, you might just have a common goal with them. And that's a working point, something you can work off of to build a community, a relationship, even with somebody who used to be all focused on the fear, all focused on the negativity. And you would be surprised how much you have in common with a lot of people. Building on that is how you convince people to work together, have discussions, maybe even have a discussion during a difficult time in their life. Maybe you help them be a little less negative. Maybe you help them show that by paying attention to the fact that they're spreading fear, those fear-inducing headlines they read probably aren't healthy for them. Maybe you can show them how to have a little joy in their life. This works. And I've changed people's minds in the past about risks and difficulties. And I've talked about fear-laden topics a lot in information security. I've talked about these topics all over the world. And I know the best way when it comes to making a decision based on something that could be fear-driven is to never appeal to the fear. Always stay calm, always look at what you're doing, know where your goals are. And like I said before, PatchTech is, why I'm here. And PatchTech's goals are to help secure open source ecosystems. WordPress now, but more open source projects in the future. We believe we can do that without fear, without trying to make people afraid about how insecure some software may be, right? By all of our employees have extensive experience in security and open source and hosting and running agencies and basically helping people grow their projects. And we want to fix the security problems we know exist in open source, and we've already started, helping developers with the PatchTech Alliance I mentioned before, helping security researchers, again, the PatchTech Alliance, helping site owners and agencies with the PatchTech app, helping hosting providers and even our competitors with threat intelligence. So we help the community. We're here now doing that. And again, now talking about the truth, that's what I started the talk on. And I mentioned about how a lot of people believe the truth is something that is fed by fear-based headlines. But I shared with you a way to detect it, if they're using fear in their discussion, and a way to kind of work around it by focusing on trusting, focusing on looking at helping those others, looking to who the helpers are. I think that's a quote from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Look for the helpers. So, and I hope that many of you, do you have a question? No. All right. I hope that many of you trust that I've been telling you the truth when I speak today. And I hope that I've shown you, or at least some of you, most of you, Talisha and Neb will talk, that you can pick a lock and that hopefully you are successful. And in turn, I trust you, like I said earlier, to be good with this knowledge I've shared with you. Now, don't get yourself in trouble using this knowledge. And I said, truth is learned through lived experiences. Don't live the experience of a jail cell, my friends. That's the conclusion to the main part of the talk. I'm going to give some references here shortly. And these are some great resources I mentioned during the talk. Lockpicking Lawyer YouTube channel. He's really entertaining to watch. He shows about how a lot of locks are not secure and marketing fluff kind of basically gets, he'll call out a lock that says pick proof real quick. I mentioned earlier the Reddit group, Art of Lockpicking, has like a nice competitive chart. You don't have to participate in the group, but it's kind of neat to see where you stand. Like, oh, they have a belt system like martial arts, like white belt, blue belt, black belt, etc. And so you can kind of see like, oh, this would be one of the more difficult locks on the scale of their difficulty. It's a really good reference chart. Tool, T000 the Open Organization of Lockpickers. It's a group out of Netherlands and has a US-based organization as well. They're very valuable too for sharing this knowledge about here's how these locks work. They're all about sharing the knowledge. They're a nonprofit as well. And of course, there's Lock Lab by Bosnian Bill, which is kind of an older YouTube channel where the individual behind it just retired from YouTube for a little while. But again, Lockpicking Lawyer and Bosnian Bill are both great resources on YouTube. And remember that this is a hobby. It's the sort of thing that you can build up like a skill, like many other hobbies you can practice. You can also just replace a lot of the things that I said in this talk, from lockpicking to anything else, to knitting, to I like to grow mushrooms, right? Like the gourmet food types. Like there's the complex nuances that I have to learn through it and I pay attention to what I'm doing. It has a lot to do with lockpicking. You apply just a little tension, getting a little bit forward momentum, and you try new things and try to make it less frustrating as you go along. Just keep working on it. Stick with it long enough and don't stick with it too long if it causes me problems in other ways. And of course, thanks to Post Status for the community we're kind of part of right now, for helping host this, help doing the AV, the recording, all that stuff. There's some contact information for me on this page, but really Post Status, I couldn't have done it without you. So thank you. Talisha has helped me a lot. Corey, if you're around, and everybody else has been part of this community. All right, so I'm going to try to find my other camera so we can do some hands-on as well. We probably have, it's a few minutes over, isn't it?
We are out of time, unfortunately, but we just want to say thank you very much, Robert, for coming and giving this. I've learned a lot, even though I was unsuccessful, but I'm going to keep trying. And again, another shout out to our awesome sponsor, StellarWP. And thank you guys all for coming. Check out our events. We do have some really good webinars coming up. And Robert, we're going to have to do this again.
Yeah, most certainly. I'll try to get a link in post status for anybody who wants the refresher where we can just do hands. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.